Hey, welcome to the Black Knight Nation podcast. I'm your host, Sal Interdonato. The Black Knight Nation podcast is brought to you by Higher Echelon. Higher Echelon is run by Joe Ross. He's a former Army fullback, former Army assistant coach, former Army officer, and he's a guest on the Black Knight Nation podcast. Check out our YouTube channel. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Give this video today a like. We have post-game press conferences. We have interviews with former players up there. There's a lot of stuff to enjoy. I just posted a Jimmy Charlo, captain of the Army team, quick interview, press interview with him about leadership and the game coming up against BC on Saturday at Mikey Stadium. So check it out. Check out our website, Black Knight Nation. There's a story on Tyrell Robinson, Army's running back, maybe making a season debut on Saturday against Boston College. That's up on our website. Kind of a preview of the game by Seth Mendelson up there also. I'm going to write a Kanye Udo Brady small story shortly and a recruiting story today. So we got a lot of content for you, but now let's get to our guest. And we want to have this solo interview with Trent Steelman for a while now, and we really appreciate one of the Army's greatest quarterbacks joining us today. Thanks a lot, Trent, for your time.
No, I appreciate that, Sal. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I was talking to Trent before the podcast that when we first started this podcast in 2020 of December, we had Trent briefly on our quote preview show of the Army Air Force game that was played at Mikey Stadium. That was way too short, so we definitely had to get Trent back on. And Trent, I mean, I covered your career at Army, such a historic career as far as where you are in the rankings of rushing and throwing the football and that kind of stuff. But really, we start with like your journey to West Point, and I kind of remember a little bit from writing. But maybe you could share that kind of how you got to West Point. Were you recruited by other schools to play quarterback, or was how did West Point get in the picture, so to speak?
So, to be honest with you, the journey to West Point is really just as unorthodox as the journey through West Point for me. I was a under-recruited 5'11" quarterback that was 175, 180 pounds, was a good athlete, loved football, was better at baseball, but had always been a multi-sport athlete just because that was the nature of my family and the environment that I grew up in. I mean, we love to compete and we love to play sports, and that's what we did. But football was my passion, and it always has been, and for a lot of different reasons. One, just because of the tough nature that the game brings and the physicality that the game brings. I just always drew to that and loved that in a weird, messed up kind of way. But was, again, a 3-year starter in high school, played actually on the defensive side my freshman year, came from a really good program out of Kentucky, Bowling Green High School, and didn't really see much recruiting action. I mean, we had about six guys that I graduated with that went on to play major Division I football, and so I was just kind of the guy that was getting them the rock, so to speak. But again, I knew, given the right opportunity, that I brought something to the table that nobody else could bring, and that was my love and passion for the game and the toughness that I knew that the game required. And so, ironically enough, my dad had played at Appalachian State and played for Coach Fisher DeBerry, and through that time he was just ending his career at Air Force, and so had some interest just from an academy standpoint. The beginning of my senior year, both from Army and Air Force, but I was a kid that was not really drawn to that environment and what that entailed, and so kind of cold shouldered them in a little bit, just naive as I was at that age, but looking back, selfishly just thought that there was something a little better for me out there. But lo and behold, the good Lord has a funny way of working, and I get to literally, I think it was March of my senior year and had 0 offers.
Hmm.
And so a grad who was actually in my hometown, Bowling Green, had sent my film up to West Point and said, "Hey, you really need to take a look at this guy." And probably 2 weeks later, I found myself through the entire application process, 3 weeks, maybe a month's tops, uh, getting through that, learning more about the academy, what I could, but short-term vision, I saw D1 football. So I essentially had committed to Army on the spot without ever taking a step on campus. Really, I mean, just understanding it was Division I football. That was the opportunity I knew I could play at, and that was the opportunity that was there, and it was time to go take it. That was, in all realness, the mentality. And so I committed to him. And the first time I had stepped foot on West Point was for the spring game.
Wow.
And at April of my senior year. And then 3 months later, I get into the prep school. I called my dad the second day I was at the prep school, and I said, "Dad, I'm not doing this just to play football. I'm coming home."
Hmm.
And he said, "Son, I love you. I'll see you at Christmas," and hung up the phone. And so right then and there, though, he sent the message. He said, "Hey, you committed to this. You're going to see it through." And he knew what was best for me. So competition arrives. I fight my way through the prep school basic training. And at that time, Demetrius Richardson, if you remember him, was, I think, the highest star recruit they playing quarterback that they had signed at that point. Was like a 3-star guy. Loved Demetrius, coming out of Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And so he was supposed to be the guy. And then there was me. And so get into training camp of our prep school year and ended up beating him out and going through my prep year and had a great year, set some prep school records there, and then here comes the coaching staff change. And so I was actually recruited by Brock and his staff, and then obviously at the end of my prep school year, that's when Coach Ellerson and his staff took over. And so they had done their homework, obviously. Had gotten word that there was a quarterback down there they probably needed to try to keep around, and met with them. But to be honest with you, there was 2 or 3 times throughout my prep school year I almost called it quits and just wanted to go back and go to another school or do something else. But um, again, it was just the commitment to the bonds that I'd made and the friendships I'd built, and then seeing it through,
Yeah,
carrying that underdog mentality.
Yeah, Steve Anderson talks about the prep school, the bond that you first form in prep school, right? And the guys that you're going to go not only to, on the football field, but are going to get you through those tough times at West Point and maybe even the prep school too. Who were some of those guys that you kind of created that bond with down at the prep school that you kind of came up with? I'm trying to remember who those guys were.
Yeah, so those were my guys. A large part of the time that I spent through my 4 years at West Point was with those prep school guys. That was Nate Combs, Malcolm Brown. That was Ty Schrader, the Mackey brothers,
Oh yeah.
Josh Jackson. There was Brian. There was a couple others that didn't quite make it all the way to the 4 years. There was Brian Rowan. But yeah, I mean, a large group of those guys were Will Wilson, Frank Allen,
Oh yeah.
Matt Villani. So a large part of those guys were significant contributors, throughout their careers at West Point. So Yeah. But those were the main group of guys that stuck around from the prep school.
Did you were schools recruiting you from the prep school trying to get you? Were you getting any opportunities or offers when you were at prep when the coaching change happens or no?
Not many, because again, just the offense that
Yeah.
the majority of my prep school film came with. Really, the only one.
Oh, we lost Trent for a minute there. Hopefully, we can get him back. Some interesting stuff with Trent about his getting to West Point and his journey, his recruiting journey. A good, really good stuff that covering Trent for 4 years at Army. You think you've written just about everything possible about Trent, and the stories that you hear are pretty stuff I had no idea. I had no idea about. So we're hoping to get Trent back on in a second. I think he might have been driving and he was here we go. We got him back. Hey, hey, we got you back here, Trent.
Sorry about that.
No, no worries, no worries. I was just kind of filling the stuff that you were you telling us about your journey to West Point and when you were at prep school. I said covering you for 4 years. You think I wrote everything about you, but then you hear like stuff that I didn't even like write. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it,
it is pretty
it's
pretty.
no, you're right. I mean, there's to be honest with you, just the the entirety of how it unfolded. I mean, for me, it's none other than God and what I believe in. But just from an outside perspective, I mean, there was just so much that went on just to get me there, and then obviously when I was there, having to work through and having to overcome, and then obviously coming into West Point was a whole nother animal,
Yeah,
So to just be able to again hold on to the fact that, and like a lot of these guys, that they were committed, and that's what I'll say about the guys I play with, not just in my class, but with Steve's class and Steve Erzinger's class and all in between. Is you had some fighters, man, and you had some guys that were really committed to the cause. And while the record might not always have reflected the sacrifices that we made, at the end of the day, we did feel a sense of victory, knowing that we at least had laid a foundation to build off of.
yeah.
That we were going to come out there and compete, and you were going to feel our will to just play the game.
Yeah, you know what? I know we got a ton to get to, but what I realized when I did some research this morning, and like I said, I think I've written everything right in my time on the beat. But your 4 years, right? Each year, you beat a Power Five school each year of your career, and that's not something that can be said. First off, I think you're still the only guy to start all from freshman year on at West Point. I'm pretty sure that's still true. Um, and then to beat a Power Five school every year in some of those games, I mean, we're pretty. I mean, we'll talk about the Boston College game, the
Yeah,
2012 Boston College game in a little bit, but I mean, that's a pretty, to to be like kind of I don't know, be covering the team your freshman year. You, I mean, did you had to win that spot in camp, right? Or no, you weren't just you
I
just
did.
walk on post and you were anointed the starting quarterback,
No,
right?
no, not by any means. I mean, that's that dynamic and is just a whole nother aspect that honestly is hard to be understood unless you're in that position and going through what you have to go through in Beast Barracks and
Yeah,
basically being told that, hey, you're going to get every opportunity to compete for the starting spot. While nothing's going to be handed to you, you're going to get your chance to prove what you're able to do. And if you win, let's ride. If not, you're going to keep fighting to win at some point, But I think just, I mean, the time frame, from transitioning from Beast Barracks through training camp, and then when you get out of training camp, oh, by the way, you're the starter for game one.
Hmm.
Here we go. I
Yeah.
mean, you're drowning in a sense, just trying to compartmentalize everything that is going on between the day-to-day grind of West Point, football, being a plebe, and so on and so forth. So it was an interesting time. There is no question.
Yeah, and it's different now, right? I mean, when you played, like you said, you were coming right out of the beast and pretty much going to preseason camp. I mean, now the
Yeah,
players do have a little bit of time in between, and it's a lot different. And you hear the stories about the
yeah,
dropping of weight from the big guys, right? And just the
yeah.
quarterback. I mean, you probably were throwing a little bit up at beast, but I mean, not. I mean, they had some right, but not like crazy. I imagine. So.
No. I mean, it was very limited. Very limited. Like I said, your priority was beast and being indoctrinated into the culture of West Point and the Army and everything that it grooms a leader to become. And so you mix that in with you as you understand the structure of West Point, being a new cadet and then a plebe and the responsibilities and just the day just the daily requirements that are asked of you is crazy in itself. But then you get tagged with becoming the first freshman starting quarterback and having to carry that and find a fine balance. It was different. It was
Yeah.
different.
And so the coaches has changed. Rich Ellerson's first year, and he decides that you're his guy. You know, that says when he's coming, it's his first season. It's your freshman year, right? And you were, I guess, Chip Bowden was among the quarterbacks there that
It
were
was.
competing for the job. Yeah, I was
Yep. And
remembering
then we
that.
had Carson Williams was
Oh wow,
the
yeah,
yeah,
there
the
was some
senior,
experience.
the old vet head. Yeah, no, Carson was my guy, man. He was, and I love Chip too, but Carson just really, he was a big time part of just my mentoring process, and he really took me under his wing, and I learned a lot from that guy, man. He was awesome.
Yeah, when you can go in there, that had a like at least I don't know if calming is the right word, but maybe he was a calming influence for you there.
He
That you
was.
know, yeah. So you go, your first game in your career is at Eastern Michigan, right?
It was.
What's that experience like? First snap, first play, and I remember I wasn't out there covering the game at that point, but I was following the game certainly, and you guys were able to pull out a win in your first career game. So what was that like for you?
Um, to be honest with you, I mean the hype surrounding it, just the PR that it got, and then obviously that make me starting as a freshman guy was was enough in itself. But then again, for me, the most calming thing and presence that kept me at home throughout my career at West Point was always football. Obviously, you learn to really understand and respect the process and appreciate the process as you go through it. But make no mistake about it, you're there as a football player to play the game you love, and so at that point it was fun. This is what I had signed up to do, and it was my opportunity was here a little quicker than what I could ever imagine, but it was up to me to go run with it, and so that's what I did.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Oh, I thought that no, that wasn't. That was actually played at Eastern Michigan, and then, I mean that first year. I mean it's a little bit. Want to get a comment up here. I'm going to read these comments to you, Trent. You can't see these, but we have readers.
Yeah.
We have watchers checking in here. Brian Keogh saying 2011 Northwestern, 2012 Boston College, 2010 Duke, 2009 Vanderbilt, all wins with Trent at quarterback. Our family loved watching him and followed his entire career at the academy. So you got some fans listening in here today. So it's pretty
Well,
cool
I
to hear.
appreciate that.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah,
cool to
no,
hear
it
that.
is.
What
No, I really do appreciate all that. It's obviously just being removed from the game in a different capacity now. It it's allowed you to reflect on a lot of things that the game is broad, and so it's been fun.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there were a lot when you played, right? I mean, I'm sure there was a lot. You had a lot of fans. I'm sure there were times where you had a lot of. I'm trying to think of when like there's games, right? And at the end of the game, sometimes there's interaction with fans and the younger fans. And when you're starting quarterback, right? And you're one of the leading rushers on the team too. And then your sophomore year, I want to is there anything else about your freshman year that before we go to sophomore year, the freshman year that was, that you like to talk about or?
I just the biggest thing for me was my what I dedicated to the game just from a physical standpoint. Like
Mm,
I remember literally Eastern Michigan, the first game I'd ever played. I come out with a torn meniscus and a broken rib, and from that point on, every off season you could guarantee there was a scheduled surgery coming, and that was known for me. But
mm,
that was one of the most learning moments from a football standpoint that made me understand the importance of weight room and putting on weight
yeah.
and what it's going to take to really excel at the next level, not on the field, but off the field. And so I took those bumps and those bruises, but I just remember that. I mean, I can recall the play vividly. It happened on both my torn meniscus and broken rib happened on the same play. It
Wow.
was crazy. Yep. But played through it.
Yeah. I
Played
mean,
all.
that was kind of a hallmark of your career, so to speak, right? You didn't, to my knowledge, you didn't miss many games, right? And as much beating as you took as a quarterback in this offense, because you're going to carry the ball. I think you carried the ball over 700 times in your career, and
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to take.
It's crazy if you think about it a little bit.
I mean,
It's
you
a
had
lot of
like,
carries.
yeah. I mean, I'm sure you played through other injuries, right? I mean, like you said, it seemed like there was a surgery scheduled at the end of every season for you. I mean, just that, but that was the
Yeah.
toughness, right? That says a lot about your toughness, no doubt.
Yeah, and again, that's just how I was raised to play the game, and what I honestly, like I kind of mentioned in a weird way, enjoyed about the game because to me it bred out the ones that were truly about it and weren't truly about it, and so that competitive nature, man, there's not a lot of sports that can draw that out of somebody, and football was it for me, so that's just kind of what I built my MO around.
Were there any others kind of other? I'm guessing there are other injuries that you played through in your
Oh,
career that.
to be honest with you, we could probably be on here for a long time. But yeah, my freshman year, like I mentioned, it was my broken ribs, torn meniscus. Sophomore year, it was torn labrum, MC joint, and turf toe. Or sorry, AC joint, and then junior year was the only 3 games that I missed was a high ankle sprain at Vanderbilt.
Hmm,
And so I missed the following 3 games for that high ankle sprain, and then came back probably a little earlier than I should to Temple when we played in Philly my junior year and tore my meniscus then. So
wow.
yeah, had surgery, labrum surgery, and then both knees. So literally after my freshman year, won every off season.
Amazing, amazing. And I think that if I could recall my newspaper days, maybe the Man of Steel might have been a nickname for you or something like that, and that's appropriately, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, this just kind of what I built my MO around and what I prided myself on. And again, just in my opinion, when you're the quarterback, you take on a lot more responsibility than just what the position is calls for. I mean, it's got to be a part of your DNA, and there's a lot of intangibles, in my opinion, that go along with that. And if you can hold true to those and bring the work ethic and obviously have some ability involved, then you'll take care of what you need to.
No doubt. I appreciate you. My dog was barking there. I apologize there.
Oh,
Um,
all good.
So sophomore year, right? That's an
Yep.
important part in Army history. It's the bring it back year, bring back winning. Steve Anderson was a captain, co-host of this podcast. He's talked about it a lot about that season. And I mean, you guys are after your first year. Do you feel like that sophomore year you guys can really do something that hasn't happened a while in Army? Do you get that
We
feeling
do,
early preseason?
because just going back to my freshman year real quick, we were 5-7 if I recall correctly, and we were on the brink of a bowl game, and we missed a field goal off the upright versus Tulane that would have put us at least at 500 and a chance at a bowl game. So we knew that we had the parts to be a good football team, and to kind of flip the tide from 5-7 and to 7-5, 8-4, and build off what we had set my freshman year. And that was the mentality that we headed to into with the off season. And so we go into my sophomore year. Ironically, going through plea boxing is actually when I started my shoulder problems, and then it carried over when we played Hawaii at home is when I actually dislocated my shoulder and tore my labrum that year. But sophomore year, it was it was a lot of ups and downs. But I just remember there are so many moments to where while we ended 7-5, there was plenty of opportunity for us to be an 8-9 win football team that year. But just again, understanding that Army could put a product on the field that was going to compete and that was going to give us a chance to win every time we took the field. I think that statement was made throughout that 2010 season.
That Hawaii game was a 3-point game. Rutgers overtime was a 3-point game.
Yep.
You know, I think there was a Temple game that was a 7-point game. So you could easily probably maybe even reach double digits that year, you know, but
Absolutely.
Steve always talks about you guys being like the good road team that year. You know, you always, anytime you got on a plane or something, you guys went out and you took care of business and stuff. I was privileged enough to watch you guys clinch the bowl berth at Kent State, and I was able to travel to that game, and that was to me that as a beat writer who the first couple of years have been through some times where I'm saying, okay, this year they could finally get something done that hasn't been done since 1996, right? That was always the year that I would bring up ad nauseum in my writing, and stuff, and now I could end that once you guys clinched that game at Kent State. Do you remember what that locker room was like afterwards when you guys were able to get that win and able to, clinch that postseason berth?
Yeah, I mean, there was obviously a lot of excitement. I think just a lot of relief in a sense, not only from players, but from coaches to feel like we have finally reached that milestone and brought in Army football back to relevance in a sense,
Yeah.
But at the same time, that was just the mentality of that team was we weren't satisfied. We knew we had an opportunity to not only flip the tide, but leave our mark and really capture what we set out to do. So it was such a fun time for us, just being around those guys and understanding everything that we had sacrificed to get to that point, and it finally paying off.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a lot about this podcast, the bowl game, the Armed Forces Bowl, and just the defense and that senior class with Steve and Josh McNary, Mike Gann, and those guys. In that bowl game, right? Just to be present at that bowl game, and for it's a 16-14. It's a really close game going down to the wire, and just to see that pass. I always talk about that pass that you complete to David Brooks to kind of seal the victory for Army. And like Ronnie Makeda being on the sidelines pretty close to me and his excitement for you guys winning and stuff. I mean, I could ask you probably about some of your great memories of being an Army quarterback, and I'm sure like maybe Boston College comes into play and those wins over the Power 5 schools. But I mean that's gotta be up there too, winning that bowl game. I'm imagining.
It definitely is. It definitely is. It's the funny thing about that play was we were basically running a counter naked off, and before we go out there, Coach Ellerson is like, "You're gonna run the ball here. You're gonna run the ball here. Don't throw." And then, sure enough, we get off the naked, and there's a linebacker screaming downhill, and here comes Brooks on the crosser, and I'm like, well, here it goes. And then that's one of those plays as a coach, you're like, no, 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 yes, 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 type. But no, it was a great memory. There's no doubt. It ranks up there too. But to be honest with you, I mean, you can't exclude obviously the Army Navy games, and that's kind of what I talked about earlier. Is just every year, really from my sophomore year on, there we gain momentum. Just getting back to being competitive with Navy. Like my sophomore year, there was one or two plays and that really could swing the tide of that game, including the fumble at the goal line where they returned it 98 yards for a touchdown going the other way. That was put us either, I think, either tying the game or at least coming within 3 points to a 14-point swing.
Yeah, it was a momentum swing.
But
Yeah.
yeah, and just I mean just crazy little things like that throughout my time there that again, just taking a step back, it makes you kind of wonder, like, man, like, why? Why could we never get to that moment to where we could beat them? But at the same time, I, I'm I'm never a man that will question, and I learn more from those defeats than I have the victories, and it teaches you about life and commitment, and really just understanding that if you leave it all out there, then you should walk away with no regrets. And to be honest with you, I don't, and so that's what gives me the satisfaction.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm pretty sure in the the beginning of the Army Navy games up to this date, they probably still show like the highlight of your senior year with I don't know. I mean, is that kind of to see that like you said? I mean, you took that game as like a maybe a part of the journey, so to speak. But I mean, I remember being on the field for that game and how hard you took it, but just the people that came and consoled you after the game had to mean a lot because they knew how much the game meant to you, football, the game, and in that game specifically meant to you, right? Especially in your senior season. So that had to be, I don't know if you can reflect back on that, but that had to be at least comforting at least.
It was, and obviously the game meant a lot to me, but the program meant a lot to me, and my
Hmm.
team meant a lot to me, and I just knew not only what I had sacrificed throughout my 4 times there, not only on the field, but as you know, off the field too. Well,
Hmm.
obviously, we didn't even hit on freshman year. Having to go through that whole honor board situation
Hmm.
and fighting through that. I mean, there was just so many things off the field throughout my 4 years that I had to fight through,
Yeah.
and I had to prove myself in a lot of different ways. And again, to me, it always resorted back to what meant the most to me, and that was commitment that I was going to prove everybody that told me I couldn't get through this place wrong, commitment to
Hmm.
the bonds that I made, commitment to my team, to Army, to West Point. That's at the end of the day, I wasn't willing to carry that burden and walk away from all that, and so I chose to fight through it. But yeah, I mean, in that moment alone, that was me. That was just me being real and
Yeah.
pouring out again my love for everything involved, and knowing that I could had put however many years into the game, that it could all have been over. But again, you're right. There was a lot of comforting things knowing the amount of people that reached out on both sides. Um, Roger
Yeah.
Staubach, I mean, there was some crazy, names that were watching that made you feel appreciated and respected for your efforts, no matter if you came out a winner or a loser. Because at the end of the day, all those guys on that field are winners, man, just because of the sacrifices that we're willing to go through to play the game.
Well said. Well said. Roger Staubach reaching out to you after the game. Anybody else of note that you like to share?
To be honest with you, it's just hard. There were quite a few. There was a general manager at the time for the Browns that had reached out, just handwritten note. Golly, it's hang on, I'll tell you.
Not Phil Savage.
It was Michael Lombardi. So he
okay.
was, yeah, he's retired now. But
yeah.
he big time writer and podcaster and all that. But yeah, and there was a few others too. But yeah, I mean, just again, the general appreciation is what really comforted me during that moment. Just knowing it was all worth it.
It pretty simply, you were a guy who laid everything out on the line when you played, right, Trent? Like you talked about the injuries that you played through and stuff, and the emotion of games too. And when you like, I see that highlight reel of this week that Army has on their social media accounts of the 2012 Boston College game, that 34-31 Army, and you scoring a touchdown in the final minute to win the game. And I guess you looking to the crowd or at West Point and putting your arms up in celebration and motioning. I mean, kind of sums you up a lot of that game, right? I mean, just how you guys fought. You never gave up. I mean, what was that game like? Because that seems like, I mean, just watching that a minute and a half or whatever it was brought back a lot of memories. So.
Yeah, and that, to be honest with you, that was just our mentality offensively that year. I mean, we had some real weapons, and we had Larry Dixon, Raymond Maples, Terry Baggett, Malcolm Brown, Jared Hassan. I mean, Brian Cobbs, like the list goes. I mean, we had some real ball carriers, and we had the guys up front that were just as nasty and love the game as much as the back end does. And so I think that combination alone, I mean, we were a very, very tough, aggressive downhill type of offense. And when you watch that, from an offensive standpoint, it just looks like a bunch of madmen running around, but that's how we played. And that's the mentality that we brought. And that game I just remember, I think we were off to a slower start. And it could really turn the tide for our season, winning or losing that game. And obviously nobody thought that we were going to be even close, much alone win the game in the fashion that we did. But again, that's just how we felt. While our record never reflected the way I really believe we competed and should have, we always felt like we deserved to be out there. And that's what I respect the most about the teams that I played with.
Yeah, I remember I thought like that the 2012 season for Army was going to be maybe on the level of the 2010 team with the talent you guys had back. It just didn't work out for you guys. I remember being out at San Diego State to start. San Diego State was a really good team there. I think Ronnie Harmon was on that team. They were really good that year. And that was kind of to me.
I tell you what, that game was probably one, it's probably the worst game I've ever played, and two, was probably the lowest I'd ever felt after a football game. I just remember I could not sleep. I mean, anything that could have gone wrong in that game did. I mean, from traveling to playing to, I mean, it was, and so I could not sleep. I remember not sleeping for a week after that game. And then we come back and we play Northern Illinois, right?
Yeah. That was a great game.
The team that went to the Orange Bowl that year, correct?
Yeah. Correct. They had like 11
lost by
that year.
1 point. Lost by 1 point, I think, on a missed extra point, a missed PAT.
Yeah.
But that game was, I mean, that's when Jordan, was it Jordan Lynch, quarterback?
Oh yeah. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, he might have been the quarterback. I was thinking Chandler Harnish, but I think it was Jordan Lynch. Yeah. Wow.
It was, I mean, ran wild. it was a crazy game. I mean, there were so many games that year. Boston College, Northern Illinois.
The Wake
I
Forest game,
mean, Rutgers,
49-37. You're right in that. I
Wake
mean,
Forest game. That's when now funny story about Wake Forest game. So it was late in the fourth quarter and we're driving. I think we're in our or in their territory across midfield, and I dislocate my ribs on a quarterback follow
hmm.
and start puking all over the ball. And literally, Ellerson's, I mean, he's looking at, screaming at me to get out. And Coach Shields says over the headset, he's like, if you don't get Stillman out, he's going to kill himself. And so I wouldn't go out. And so we go, I think it's 4th and 1, and we go for it on a quarterback sneak. Sure enough, we get it. And then sure enough, I fall on the football. And I just remember, I mean, I started throwing up all over the football. I mean, it was,
Wow.
and then Angel, I think Angel Santiago came in. But yeah, that game was, again, another competitive, wild game.
Yeah, like you say, just circumstances. What happened with the travel to San Diego State, if you don't mind sharing? Were you guys delayed or something like that?
Oh, it was, no, it was just, I think
distance?
the proximity or the time in which we left. And then I think we left, we treated it, I think we left on a Thursday, maybe even a Friday, to make a one-way trip all the way out to the West Coast. And so I think just the turnaround and the time change, it just had us all whacked out. But yeah, it was not a fun day.
I forget how, like, the two games we talked about. I forget. I'm looking through that schedule that year. It's an 8-point game at Ball State against Ball State, 10-point game against Eastern Michigan. I mean, these games are like,
yep.
That Temple game was crazy.
Oh yeah, forgot about Eastern Michigan. Crazy. Yep. I mean, that whole year was like, the margin each game, winning and losing, was like 7 points on average. I mean, it could have gone either way that year, and it's crazy.
You did get a Commander-in-Chief's win, but against Air Force, that was kind of a feather in the cap, right? That's something that's a good memory.
That's a great memory. That was a great day. That was a really good day. We came out on fire that day, and that was just one of those days. It honestly didn't matter who we were playing. We weren't losing.
Yeah, I remember Nate Combs having a pretty good game in that game. He was all over the field in that game.
Oh, Nate.
He was possessed.
Yeah, he went crazy. I mean, that guy was an absolute animal. You want to talk about some toughness now, man. That he went through so much throughout his 4 years, and every chance he got when his body had allowed him to, he would dominate. And Nate's a Kentucky boy too. He played up at St. Xavier, St. X up in Louisville. And
did you play him? You didn't play him in high school, did you?
We played him once, but it was my sophomore year. I broke my collarbone, and so I was out that game. But yeah, we played him one time.
He was one of my favorite guys to watch play in my years of covering Army football, period, and just one of my favorite guys to talk to. I mean, just a really good dude. Like you said, how much he went through just to play, to get back on the field. And wow, definitely a shout out to Nate Combs. It's great to talk like back in this era of football because we do talk about the 2010 team a lot, but we really don't talk about those teams like Trent. Larry Dixon, in my opinion, was one of the best athletes I ever seen play at West Point.
Absolutely.
Respect. I mean,
yeah. I got the privilege, obviously, to coach with Coach Shields, who was my offensive coordinator and quarterback coach while I was at Army. Shout out Coach Shields. But he talked about recruiting Larry Dixon and how Larry Dixon averaged, like, I think 20-something points in basketball, was like a heavily recruited point guard or something. And Larry was 5'7" on a good day, 235 pounds of just a ball of muscle. He was a freak. An absolute freak.
Yeah, I mean,
and then you had Larry, or you had Raymond Maples, who was 215, 220 pounds at a slot back. Terry Baggett, who was 220 pounds at a slot. I mean, Malcolm, who was 200 pounds and could run and catch. I mean, we had some dudes,
Yeah. I mean, two things one thing I remember about Larry Dixon is maybe one of the first practices that I ever saw him. He hurdled Josh Jackson in a drill, like hurdled him. Like Josh Jackson was
Yeah.
almost standing straight up, and he hurdled him. I'm like, I've never. This is guy's going to be something else. And then I always talk Terry Baggett. He was a good basketball player too. Not maybe a scorer that Larry was in high school, but he guarded Anthony Davis in high school. Terry Baggett. He played against Anthony
That's
Davis
great.
in high school. So it's like those stories always good. We I know we're running long here. I want to get to your real quick, not real quick, but about your time after West Point, after you graduate. You know, you serve in the
Yeah.
Army, and an opportunity with the Ravens. Team USA is before the Ravens, right? Or no? Yeah, it's before the Ravens. You got a chance to play for Team USA. You transition from quarterback to wide receiver, really, to try to make it in the pros, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean that whole after West Point is probably a whole story in itself, a whole hour in itself. But
Part two,
yeah,
probably.
so
Yeah.
get the opportunity, yeah, play in the East West Shrine game. Obviously knew there wasn't much need if I was ever gonna have a chance to play at the next level, which that as was my day one goal as a kid playing the game. I think any kid who sets out to play the game and gets the opportunity to continue to play the game has the aspirations to play in the NFL. And so I knew there probably wasn't going to be much of a need for a triple option quarterback at the NFL level. So I decided to try to make the transition, play wide receiver, more slot oriented. And that's what I did at the East West Shrine game. Had a really good week of practice. And that's really when the draft hype, I guess, quote unquote, started to really come to light, so to speak, and amp up a little bit. And so get through May to the draft and get the opportunity to sign with Baltimore as a undrafted free agent. Uh, ended up going well. I started my so this is another crazy story. So I'm leaving from West Point to go to rookie mini camp down in Baltimore, and going down there for 3 days, turn around and coming back to West Point because they were getting ready to graduate, and I was an August graduate because of the honor board that had happened my freshman year, and so I'm in the car get the approval, heading in the car to Baltimore, and then I get a call from my I think it was my company commander at West Point saying that I needed to come back.
Hmm.
So I turn around and I come back to West Point. Obviously, I have to alert Baltimore what's going on, so on and so forth. And we finally get it approved at midnight of that same day. And mind you, I have to start rookie minicamp the following day. So I kid you not, I still love Coach Ellerson to this day, but a large part because of this. Coach Ellerson gets in the car and he drives me at midnight to Baltimore so that I can participate in I get there at like 3 or 4 a.m., get like 2 or 3 hours of sleep, and then start rookie minicamp. And so because of like what had happened, they basically not knowing, if I was gonna have to go serve, which at that time it was obviously the rule for 2 years, basically said, well, we'll still bring you down, but we'll bring you down as a tryout now. I'm like, all right, that's fine. Still get an opportunity, whatever.
Yeah.
So get get to Baltimore at like 3 a.m., get a couple hours of sleep, and start rookie minicamp that next day. Go through 3 days, leave, call me back, and they're like, hey, we still want to sign you. Obviously, I had the military commitment, so go serve my 2 years at Hunter Army Airfield as maintenance platoon leader, and then get a call randomly, really one day, asking if I still wanted to pursue football, and so I got that opportunity, and then picked up training. So that was in 2015. So I graduated in 2013, and then in 2015 Again, got the opportunity to get back to playing, and so was in Savannah, started training, and got a chance to play for Team USA at that time. I don't even know if they still do it anymore, but basically we were playing in a round robin against other countries for a real gold medal. I mean, it was basically it was Olympic events like the International Football Alliance, something like the
Yeah.
AFAF or something like that. But anyways, for me, it was just a chance to, one, play again, two, get some film, and three, prove I can play the wide receiver position. And so ended up winning the MVP of the tournament. And ironically enough, re-signed with Baltimore 2 days before training camp uh, began in 2015. So get through training camp, get through some preseason, get cut, playing a couple leagues, one of which I was playing up there in Hudson Valley
Hmm.
for over in, golly, what's the minor league stadium
Oh yeah, Hudson Valley
right
Renegades.
across the, yeah, so we played, yes, we played in their stadium um, for basically a league that is like the AAF, like all those startup leagues that are trying to basically
Yeah.
become the feeder for the NFL that have failed. That's what that league was. So did that for 2 or 3 months after I got cut, and felt like I had done what I needed to do. And also had gotten married that summer of 2015. So a mixture of the product that I felt like I had put out enough to where if it was going to happen, it was going to happen. If it wasn't, it wasn't.
Yeah.
And then obviously trying to start my life with my wife and move on a little bit. So I moved back to Atlanta where she's from and got a commercial real estate job in December of 2015. Um, was sitting in about an hour and a half of traffic every day, missing the game, and that's when I got a call from Coach Ian Shields to start my coaching career in 2016 for Jacksonville University.
Yeah, yeah, Coach reunited with Coach Shields. Real quick on your time with the Ravens, what you will you remember the most about that as far as you know playing in those preseason games? Because you know getting into games was a big deal for an
Mm-hmm.
Army football player to get even that far at the time, right? I mean that was a pretty big deal for an Army football player. What do you remember about that, real quick?
I think the biggest thing was the satisfaction, again, what I had really driven my entire career on, playing the game of football, was doing something nobody told me I could do.
Mm.
And the fact that I had reached that point and really reached it twice and had the opportunity to put ink to paper on 2 NFL contracts, I mean, to me, I felt like I accomplished what I needed to, and I had proven what I needed to, and I was okay walking away from the game from a playing standpoint, understanding that I had given everything I had got, and that's what I had set out to do, was to leave the game no matter where it ended with no regrets, and that's why I can sit here comfortably and say that and be
Yeah.
okay with how everything has unfolded and how everything has just took place and happened the way that it has. It's all for a purpose and for a reason, but I wouldn't change a thing.
Well said. Well said. Now your coaching career. You know, you start at Jacksonville State under Ian Shields, like you said. You're coaching quarterbacks right away, or
No, so it's actually Jacksonville University. They're
my
in
fault?
Jacksonville,
I
Florida.
apologize.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
good.
thank you, Trent. Yeah.
Everybody got them confused, but no. So I started out as the wide receiver coach my first year. So I was coaching receivers. And then my second year there was still the receiver coach, and then got the special teams coordinator title. And then year did that for 2 years as a special teams coordinator. But in year three with him, I actually became the quarterbacks and B backs and special teams coordinator. So that was an interesting year and learning experience. And then our fourth and final year there is when I became the offensive coordinator and quarterback coach for them. And then obviously after year 4 there, they got rid of the program, and so that's how I got back to the home state of Kentucky, coaching quarterbacks for Eastern for the last 3 years, and took an early retirement officially at the end of last season.
Yeah. Now you'll be able to watch this maybe on the replay, but my daughter and I, we have like a YouTube channel where we open up packs of football cards and sports cards and stuff like that. And this
Yeah.
guy right here, you might know him. It's a Parker McKinney rookie card. That's a guy you coached at Eastern Kentucky, right?
That's my guy. Yep, that's my guy. So yeah, we got there actually during COVID year, and Parker was coming off a redshirt freshman year, where I played came in late in the season. I played some games, and started some, but was kind of in and out due to injury or another quarterback, so on and so forth. But ended up winning the quarterback battle that we established from day one when we came in there, and over the past 4 years as a starter has rewritten the record books at Eastern Kentucky. A very proud and winning tradition program. And so he's actually in his 6th year right now, still at Eastern, because he got an extra year because of COVID. But he's going to he'll be a legit NFL draft prospect. He'll have the chance to hopefully fill his dream on Sundays. But again, the kid's got every tangible, but what has allowed him to succeed, in my opinion, again, the most important things with the position is the intangibles, his toughness, his dedication. He's a kid that literally came in looking like a goofball off the streets, and now he's an NFL prospect. So that's no hats off other than to that man and the dedication and work that he put in. And I was also, while we were in Jacksonville, we were fortunate enough too. I coached another NFL guy, Calvin Turner. Was probably, I kid you not, one of the most dynamic athletes I've ever been around, associated with. When when they got rid of the program, he actually went out to Hawaii as an athlete, return specialist. I mean, set records at Hawaii, but
Nice.
he got the chance to play on some Sundays too, man. But yeah, so been around again, just fortunate enough to been around a lot of different people. It's just opened a lot of different doors that I never thought were possible, and it's all because of the opportunity that West Point gave me, and football's given me, and military's given me. So again, Sal, man, to be honest with you, I wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to really talk to you briefly about your decision to step away from football. How hard was that for
Mm-hmm.
you? And I'm guessing there's still an itch. Do you do any like personal coaching right now or no?
I do. Um, I do that. I do. I mean, football again. It's a part of me. While it's not who I am, it's always going to be a part of me, and largely a part because of the opportunities that it's given me. I mean, it's obviously given me West Point and that career, and but it's given me my family. I mean, I met my wife through it, and so uh, it was tough for sure. There's no question. But at the end of the day, to me, as you can imagine, I'm all in or all out, and so
Yeah.
that's what drives who I am. I'm a very passionate person. I'm a very committed person, and so I just gotten to the point to where my family was more important, and that's where I wanted to spend the time and see what other opportunities were out there for me. So, but yeah, I train kids. I still stay involved. That'll never go away. So the biggest thing that I'm loving just about being around and training kids is honestly just trying to give them a realistic perspective of what it takes and how hard it is and how it's not going to come as easy as what reality seems sometimes, And so I think just having that platform in general will always give me that motivation just to continue to be around the game.
It's awesome. It's awesome. I mean, I just, hey, Coach Shields is back as a head coach somewhere, Trent. You might be getting a call down the road. You never know. So,
Nah, you know, I'm enjoying it too much. I can kind of pick and choose, and like I said, I can go out there and train a kid for an hour, get my fix, and come back home and not have to worry about a kid transferring or who we're going to pay and so on and so forth.
hey, you have a couple sons, right? You think are they
I do.
they going to be
Oh, they
football
love it.
players or?
I'm actually coaching their flag football team right now, and I'll tell you what, Sal, it is 100 times harder than coaching college kids. I got my oldest son is 6, and then I got a 4-year-old son, and then I got a 1.5-year-old little girl. But yeah, they're both on the flag football team, and I tell you what, man, the first practice we had, I honestly almost threw in the rag. It was, I couldn't even get them lined up. I mean, it was impossible. But we're sticking with it. We're 1-1 right now, so we got a lot of room to build. We're good to go.
Great to hear. Are they wearing your number 8, or did it?
Absolutely.
Nice.
Now, my wife she played college basketball, so she played college basketball at Georgia Southern. So she was a number 2, so they got to split the numbers. Typically, Brady, my oldest, he'll take 8, and then my youngest, or my middle kid, Camden, he'll take the number 2. So it works
awesome.
out well.
Very, very cool. And that it's great, right? When it might have been hard lining them up at first, Trent, but when you can spend that time with your child, and I done it, when you can coach your kid in a sport that you love too, and that you see that they grow to love it, and you're not really kind of forcing them to just kind of gravitate to it a little
Absolutely.
bit. It's a great feeling, and man, that's great to hear. We really appreciate your time, all your time here. There's only been one part 2 of the Black Knight Nation podcast with Nate Sassaman. They could probably be a part 2 with Trent Steelman too down the road if you'll have it, because there's so much to cover, so much great stories today. Thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it, and you're welcome anytime back on the podcast. If you ever want to do some analysis for us, post-game analysis, I want to ask you about what you think about the new Army offense and how you would fit in it. Maybe that's how you would have ran it, or how you would be in that offense. That might be for part 2, maybe of a podcast.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I'd have to do a little bit more study on them. I've seen glimpses of them. I've watched them a couple times this year. But I'd have to watch him a couple more times on offense. But I mean, just like anything, it's going to take time. I mean, the one thing that will not change with what they do and the mentality that they bring is, again, they're going to run the ball, and they're going to run the ball with a type of will and want to that can't be matched. And so you can dice it up however you want, but at the end of the day, as long as they execute and carry that mentality, they'll be fine.
Well said. Bryson Daly, their quarterback right now, reminds me a lot of Trent Steelman. So
I like that kid. I like him. I do. I see that he's got a certain swagger about him that reminds me a lot of myself. I like him. I like the way he plays. I like his edge. He seems like a big tough kid.
No doubt, no doubt. Again, Trent, really appreciate it. Thanks so much. We hope to talk to you soon, and all the best with what you're doing right now and coaching the quarterbacks
Appreciate
and spending time with your kids. Thanks so much, Trent. You have a good day.
Appreciate it, Sal. Thank you for having me. Go Army.